over to our instructor for class. Thanks, Danielle.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, guys. Welcome to our Friday night beading hour. And thank you for joining. It's great to see you guys. Tonight we're doing the Seaside Bracelet, the Seaside Cuff. And it's the little seashell band that is made with SuperDuos and then embellished with real seashells from the craft wall and some little metal 3mm beads. And so here on the mat, I have most of the materials out. This one has, of course, the SuperDuo beads. And the color that I used in these samples is the white pearl. I think it's called luster, like luster white. It's a really pearly color. But of course, if you wanted to change that up and use another color, you could do that too. Then I'm using some 11-0s in the embellishment to add the seashells and some 8-0 pearl to do the clasp connection. So just a few of those are needed. And of course, these are the 3mm metal beads that you're seeing here. So you'll need some of those. And then a clasp, of course. These are the clasps I'm using. And the seashells are the craft beads. You get a lot of them. So like you could probably make more jewelry with this afterward. You definitely could at least make a few necklaces, anklets. So lots of those. And then at the end, I was going to show an idea to add a charm and a cool earring that looks really great with it. To make the earring, all you would need is a set of these little cowrie shell charms, and they have gold and silver. And then I used a little sea star. I use that as a charm on the bracelet and in the earring to kind of pull it together. And last but not least, some ear wires there to make those. For putting it all together, you'll need some tools and you'll need Wildfire for the stitching. I'm also going to use size 12 beading needles today. With SuperDuos, I always like using a 12 just because for maneuverability to be able to get around through those, there's usually some tight turns. And let's see, you'll also need some pliers. So the usual pliers that I've got out are, I've usually got these kind of square shaped chain nose pliers or square nose, both for flattening my Wildfire and later for doing a jump ring. And when I bring the jump rings out, I'll be using one of these like kind of a curved. It's a chain nose plier again, but it's got a bent nose on it. All right, so that is everything. So I know that the stitch is a little unusual. It's an odd count peyote stitch with the SuperDuo beads. And I was thinking to start out just introducing the stitch. I was going to use 2 colors so I can show, make the rows stand out from each other, especially in that first row. And I do believe that we'll have time to go over it twice if anyone wants to see it more than once. And then at that point, once everyone's got the stitch, I'll switch ahead to one that I've got ready that will show how to do the finishing edge on it. And once you've done that, I'll show how to do the tacking and embellishing with the seashells and with the little seed beads and metal beads in there. All right, so getting started here, let me grab my pliers. Another trick to getting the SuperDuos here open, they're tight, it's just to use your pliers there. And I just chose some bright colors, or zoom colors, so you guys can see really well. Okay, and then thread. This is the 0.006. And as far as length, you'll definitely need to add threads. So a comfortable working length is really all you'll need. But I added thread, I think, at least once during this design in making my bracelets. Okay. And what I did there is I just flattened the end of my Wildfire to get an easy needle threading experience going there. Bring it down and fold it over like we usually do for a 1-strand design. And then a couple of choices. What you can do is you can use a stop bead if you want to. And I think just taking a glance here to see, I think I did recommend doing a stop bead, but you can also just string those first 13. And once you do the first turn, it'll lock it in. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going to string 13 beads and I'm just alternating colors so I can show really clearly the difference between rows 1 and rows 2. And because this is peyote, that first rows 1 and 2 are strung together, right? And then when you add row 3, it pulls row 2 into place. And I'll show you what I mean. Same as when you're working with a single hole bead. This is just the 2-hole version of that same stitch. So let's see, there's 4 more, there's 8. Oops, there's 9, 10. All right, so let's see, I should have 13 on the needle here, or on the wire, or on the thread. Make sure I got that right. There's 4 and 5, okay. And once you've got those on there, and you know how in peyote stitch, I'm trying to think of how to best explain it. In a peyote stitch design, what you would have is up beads, right? But because these are 2-hole beads, it can be a little confusing figuring out, well, what's my up bead and what's my down bead? And that's where having them in different colors is really helpful. And so in this case, my row 1 is going to be red and my row 2 is going to be turquoise. So now I'm going to add row 3. So I want to pick up red again, right? And you remember in peyote, you pick up a bead, skip a bead, and then you go through the next up bead. So stick with me here, but I'm picking up my first bead here. And my next up bead is going to be that one. And you might need to turn it if it's not laying the right direction. And pull tight. And what you'll get is 2 beads sitting on top of. You can also help it by pulling, working until threads apart. If it's not tight, it'll make it like pop into place like that. And come down just a little bit. Make sure you guys can see that really well. Okay, so I'm going to pick up my next bead of this row. Go through my next up bead. And again, I'm going to pull those apart. And so you'll start to get the stacking. That's familiar to everyone who knows peyote. This is that same exact process there. And also it'll get much more easier to get it to kind of, I don't know, pop into place after you've got a few stacks going. And all the next ones just kind of, they just do exactly what you want. And I realized I didn't explain SuperDuo beads this time, but I can do that now as I'm working, and then I explain a little better when we start again. But SuperDuo beads have 2 holes, and they're symmetrical. So when you first start stringing, it doesn't matter which hole you go through. And then afterward, you just go through the open one. Depending on your design, you're going through the open hole or looping around and going through. So in this case, we're just going from left to right. So you'll hear me call this side left and that side right. And so here's where in peyote stitch with an odd count, you get to the end of your row and you've got a bead hanging, and you know you need to add another bead and then keep going with your next row, with row 4. But in order to do that, you have to do an odd count turn. And I know this is where it's a little bit unusual, but I'm going to go slow and just show the structure. So here's the last bead of row 3. And now here's the turn. You just want to come up through those 2. So this is the row 1's right side hole and row 2's left side hole. So go ahead and come up through both of those. And if it's loose, you can just pull on both sides there. And now I need to do that turn in reverse. So I'm going to come down through the right side hole of my row 2 and the left side hole of row 3. Oops. Okay, and I should be able to tighten it up here. And this gets a lot easier after you've got a few rows on. Your first row, you're going to want to pull and tighten. What I'm doing here is kind of just holding it with my thumb, pulling working and tail threads until I feel like that's nice and tight. So there it is, rows 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to turn and go through the right side hole of my row 3 bead, the last one I added. And now I'm going to start stringing row 4. So here's row 4, bead number 1. And 2. And now it becomes really easy. You can see your up beads so easily, like this way. And even if you were working with a solid color, like I did in the sample, it will still stand out pretty obviously what is my up bead and what is my my new bead. And so when you get to this part, you're on the top side here. You don't need to worry about an odd count turn. I just want to change color and start building row 5. Let's come down through the right hole. That last SuperDuo bead there. And then just keep stringing. So let's finish this row. Let's do the odd count turn one more time. And then I will start again and I'll show it right from the top. Just traveling down. And you could work this stitch with different, you know, with a different number of beads. And odd count, any odd number would work. If you wanted to go for a different width of cuff, you can make it bigger or smaller. So here's a turn. I'm going to pick up this bead and bring it up. And again, just going to go through those two. And there we go. And then turn through the other hole of that bead, the right side hole. Continue through the left side hole of the last one we added. And that should sit right next to it. And notice that one was just tight without me having to really go and work on it at all. It just, and the rest of the bracelet works up just like that without you really having to worry too much about it. You would just do that turn here and start building the next row. The tension seems to just handle itself from here on out, I feel like. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim this here so I have thread to start one more time.
Hey Danielle, it's Carmi.
Hey.
Yes, the first group that you did, I think for all of us, we want to see it again.
Yeah.
We know that that's the hardest part, but then it was going together so quickly and easily. So if you would just, there's a couple people that I think if you show it one more time, we'll definitely get the startup part.
Gotcha. Yeah, and let me know. I did I kind of accounted for this being the real bulk of class. So if we need to do it a third time, that's totally okay too, because the rest of it is really smooth sailing. So I'm going to just throw 13 beads on the thread, and the 13 beads that I'm stringing, I'm just alternating colors and just doing that only to show the difference between the rows. It also looks really cool, but I think it helps demonstrate, you know, what we're doing. And of course, on your design, you want to leave a much longer tail than what I'm leaving here. I'm just working on a little sample length here. And just stringing 13 beads, alternating my colors. There's 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, and there's 13. And I think I did opposite colors from the last one. Sorry about that. So now I'm going to be working turquoise as my third row. If you can get them to turn, Like right now, what I'm trying to do is get my reds to turn this way. I've never really been successful at getting it to do that automatically. So I'm just turning them each individually as I go. But row 1 is my turquoise beads. And the red beads are going to become my row 2 as I add my row 3. So again, that's 13 SuperDuos strung through any hole. Don't worry about which hole. And now pick up your first bead for row 3. And what you'll want to do next is skip a bead. So just skip that SuperDuo and go through the open hole of the next one. So it's your basic peyote stitch, but with a 2-hole bead here. When you pull tight, what I did there is I pulled the working and tail thread apart, and I did that to make it tight so that those beads will sit the way I want them to. And I'm just gonna do that again. I'm gonna grab another bead, I'm gonna skip a bead, and go through that open hole of my next bead. And you wanna just pull those apart. Okay, and so I'm just gonna keep going. 1 new bead, skip a bead, and top hole in the next bead. And if it's not sitting right, I just pull them apart and they'll pop right into place. New one, skip one. And there's the open hole of the next bead. Skip that. And there's the next one. And so on this row, it's really the only row, skipping one, go through the next, or you have to worry about tension at all. The rest of it, I really do think it just kind of does its own tension, but let me know if there's anyone who doesn't agree with that, and we'll play with it and see. But so what I did here is, now I'm trying to add my last bead, and I've got that, nowhere to go problem that you have on odd count peyote. And so what I'm going to do is a turn. And to do that turn, I just want to go through the right side hole of row 1 and the left side hole of my row 2 bead. So those two right there. And it's really loose and it's really wonky right now. I'm going to tighten it up one more time. Here's the tail and the working thread. Just going to tighten that up and pull that. So now it's sitting where we want it to, but I got to get down here. So I'm going to use that right side hole of that SuperDuo bead that is my row 2 bead. And I'm just going to continue, if it'll let me, through that left side hole of my row 3 bead. So those two there. And it's still a little loose, so I'm going to go ahead and pinch it when I do this part. I'm going to pull it. And there you go. And if you still feel like it's loose at this step, what you can do is hold both of these beads here kind of with your thumb and pull on each of these strands. Get that to be really tight. Make your turn, which is just coming up through the right side hole of that last bead. I flipped it, sorry there guys. That's the right side hole of that last bead. I went up through it. And now I'm going to pick up my next bead, which is the first bead of row 4. And we'll just keep going. And then how are we doing? We're doing pretty good. I can start it one more time if need be. Or I can switch to showing the clasp. That is ready to go also. Oops. Or I could just hit my phone. There we go.
Danielle, what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you keep going and we'll watch the clock. And if we have a chance to show it a third time, we'll do it at the end.
That sounds great. Perfect. Yeah, let's do that just in case there's anything that takes a little longer than I think it might be. Perfect. So there's that row 4. I'm going to throw row 5 on there so you can see that on this part, there's no odd count turn because we've got a place to go, right? We've got the new bead with somewhere to go through. So that is the easy part of the row. And what you'll notice when you've got, you know, this first little part built is that you will have open beads on your starting side. And that's a great segue into showing the clasp. So I'm going to do the odd count turn one more time here. So here's my last bead of that row. And then just turning back here, going through these two here. And go up. And then come down through those two. And then getting back to where I need to be, coming up that way through the open side. And then you just keep building just like that until you're at the length that you'd like it to be. And so once you get all the way ahead to a working length that is about an inch smaller than you want your bracelet to be, and you'll notice that it uses most, if not all, of an entire tube to get the length that I'm about to show you. I'm just uncoiling it here. I saved my thread. Okay. I use a business card to store my work in process. It's kind of a cool little trick. And you can see on this one, I followed my own directions and I used a stop bead at my beginning side, which is good, but you know, once it's locked in, you don't really need it. So there's what nearly a whole tube of beads will get you, is about this length. And that is, let's measure it real quick. So 5.5. So when I throw on my clasp, it's going to go up to about 6 1/4. And let's see, because we build out to about there. So closer to 7 actually, but remember with a toggle that you want to go from here to there. So yeah, a little bit bigger than that, about 6 3/4. If you just use one tube. If you need it to be longer, you'll need like a 2.5 or a 2 1/4. All right, so let's start the starting side. I'm pulling off that stop bead. I'm just going to thread my needle here. And the good news is this part is super easy. And it tapers down really nicely. That's the bonus of having done the stitch this way, is it takes the work out of it at this step. So I'm going to do my turn. Right now, my thread is exiting from the inside hole. So it's, let me show you on one of these, the inside part. And so I need to get to the open side, right? So I'm just going to turn like that. And now I'm where I need to be there. I'm going to grab some beads. And what you'll want to do is fill in the spaces and stop when you get to this side. And I'm going to kind of pick it up like this. It's a little easier for me to go this direction. And each row is going to have one less than the row before it. Okay, one more. Okay, and so this is where we would have normally done an odd count turn. But instead of doing that, I'm just going to go through this one. The open side of that last bead I strung. So we're just tapering down here. And just keep going. And I've got one more. Same thing I did before. Just going to turn and go through that open side of that last bead. Super easy. And at the end, when we weave in, the best part is you can reinforce all that on the side. Okay. And so this is I tapered down 3 rows. So taper down row 1, 2, and this is row 3. You could taper it down more if you wanted to. I think for my design, I like the look of it being, about like that. You could bring it down even further, but I liked better being a center point here. So same thing as before, I'm just going to turn. I'm just going to go through that open side of the last bead I added. And now I'm going to switch to seed beads. So we're switching from SuperDuo over to our size 8. Okay, so first you want to just pick up one and go through the top hole, the next one. And then you've got choices here. So this is my toggle. This is going to be my bar side. So, I think it doesn't actually matter which side you decide, they're the same. So, but I'll show the toggle bar side first. Grab that. And so if you remember when you're putting on a toggle, it needs to have kind of like air. If you were to even though these have like a built-in, essentially like a built-in seed bead, if you were to just stitch it directly in like we're going to do on this side, it wouldn't have enough room to maneuver into the toggle ring. So we're going to add seed beads to do that. So how to do that? She'll pick up another seed bead. Go through. And I get one more. Oops, that came off. And so that's locked in there really nicely. I'm going to head back over there. And a couple ways you can do this. You can use your thread on the side to turn. And we've done that in a few of our other classes. It's a little trick I like to do. Just turn there and come back through all those beads to exit your center one. And now I'm going to build 3 seed beads off of that. Go through my toggle bar. And if your toggle is different and it doesn't have this built in, you would just be going through your jump ring at this step. Go back through all 3 of those. Okay, and so now I've got those 3 kind of tight. I want to go through the opposite side. So right now my thread is exiting from this side of the 8. It's going that direction. Just want to go through the opposite direction. And what it does is it makes that bead sit on top of the other ones, kind of perpendicular to each other like that. Just by going in the opposite direction from where my thread was exiting. And then just reinforce that by going through it all again. So all 3 of those. There you go. And through your toggle or your jump ring, if that's, you could also be using another clasp style would work for this too. And down. And again, that opposite direction. And then just keep going. And now to weave in, and this is also the way you add thread. You just start going through, following the thread path. My needle almost came off of my thread there. There we go. And there's no, there's no requirement to go through a certain bead or a certain spot. It's just wherever, I tend to go wherever my needle easily travels. And if it starts getting tight, I'll just choose a different path. But it's also a chance to reinforce your sides over here, because you'll probably have a situation where you've got every other. And if you want, you can lock them in so that they look symmetrical on the sides like that. And it's really hard to see with the white thread. I was wishing I did this one in like the barley color. Of course, I thought of that after I made the whole thing. So another trick for weaving in, if you don't want to go through all the, because it's really hard to get your needle through all of these center ones. You're doing all kinds of turns. And another way you can do it is you can just use your side to weave in. Just following the side, and then I'm just going through the other hole of that same SuperDuo bead to do my turn. So there's a side weave in. Also handy for later, if you have enough working thread left, you can start your embellishment with it. And so that's the bar side. Let's do the other side, which is really super easy, really quick here. I've got tons of working thread left over here. There's that. Okay, same thing. I'm just going to very quickly taper down this side. This is the same thing we just did. You just get to see it twice. So I'm going to go ahead and add a bead in between. I'm using SuperDuos again. In between each one. Oops, it's stuck to my mat there. And so when you get to the end, just go ahead and turn and go through the open side, your last bead. And so this is just a really, really fun stitch. You can make lots of these. I feel like they're really fast, so you can make a lot of them as gifts or for like your craft booth. Oops, I almost picked up a bead. I added my last one here, and I just need to turn and go through the open side of that same bead, not adding a new bead. There we go. Okay, so that was my last row there. I'm just been adding the 1, 2, and the 3. But again, if you wanted to play with that and try something new, you could come up with something very cool by trying, different tapers. And so definitely play with that and see if you can come up with something else. I chose this also for speed because it's just a quick way to end it. Oops, there's the little metal things on there. Okay, so this is my toggle ring, and my toggle ring has a built-in like connector on it. These are the ones from Michael's. Let me bring that package back out. They're really cool. If you're using something different, if yours has a jump ring, just do your jump ring here the same way that I'm going to be doing this one. And just make sure that jump ring is closed. It can really help if that's an oval jump ring. That I tend to have better luck with oval jump rings on thread. Because they kind of, they open on the side. But I'm just treating this like a seed bead. And it's the same thickness as a size 8 seed bead. If you guys have ever noticed those clasps, I feel like they were kind of made to be almost exact. You can see that. So it's super handy. And I'm just going to go through this next one here. And see how you just pops right in there like that. Super easy. And I need one more bead. And there you go. Same thing I did before. I'm going to use the thread bridge on the side as a place to turn. And come back up and reinforce all of that connection that I've got going on here. You might even be able to get through all of it at once. And there it is. If you want to make that even tighter, you can, or you can start weaving in now. If you get over here and you notice on this side, there isn't a thread bridge to turn like I did on this side. When you're running into that, you can make a thread bridge. Just create one, kind of the way we did our odd count turn. So you just kind of weave around. And coming up. And there you go. Now you have a thread bridge you can turn in. Okay, and I'm just gonna go through all those one more time. And then this side, I have a lot of working thread left because I think what happened was I added new thread at one point during, working on my design. And I went ahead and added a bunch of extra, knowing I want to do that embellishment. So that's another shortcut you can take. But in the handout, it does show how to start a new strand to do your embellishing. So either way works. If you want to save yourself just a few minutes with the weaving in, you can, kind of kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. Okay, so here we go. That's a reinforced, solid clasp there. Now I'm going to just weave down. Go through that one. And that. I went through 3 there, but all I'm really doing right now is just traveling. Okay. So I'm going to switch to embellishing really quick. Let me just clean up my mat. And first thing I'm going to grab is I'm going to grab those little metal beads. Those are those little I believe they're 3 millimeters, gold tone 3 millimeter rounds. And you don't need that many, just a few. I made both of my samples. I made 2 of these so far with this one pack, and this is what's left. So they go a long way.
Danielle,
yeah,
can I stop you for 1 second because
of course, yeah.
The clasp set that you're using tonight, it looks like a jump ring, but it's not a jump ring because it has a little attachment. Could you just show? I would like Lori to see that it already had that little extra component that you beat it into.
Yeah, it's a wonderful shortcut.
Thank you.
Yeah. But of course, if you're using a jump ring, just treat your jump ring like we taught that. It's just a 1-for-1 substitution there. So this is, I want to just really quickly mention a little bit about what I did for this. It's completely freestyle. You can make a pattern if you want to, or you can just put them wherever you like. But it can be however you want it to be, and it doesn't have to be using the same beads I'm using. You can use anything you like. But what I used in the samples are those, and I used some size 11 silver line gold. They barely stand out next to those shells, but in person, I feel like it really pops. So when you're looking at where they are, I use them as little picots in my turns to get the shells to stay. And I alternated facing the shell up and down, but you can see those little picots in there. So that's how we're going to do it. We're going to make little picot stitches inside and on top of the shells, and I just alternate it with those little metal beads.
And Danielle, just before you get going, will you tell people again the gold beads, if you could just show them that number?
Oh, yeah.
It's not a seed bead, it's from the beading wall metal beads.
Yeah, and it's in, I can show, so the way that these are, let me grab it from the handout because it's kind of truncated. You put a 10 in front of that 288, and that's how you can get the SKUs. But it is right here, the 10 288 412.
Thank you, Danielle. I appreciate that.
I think a size 8 gold seed bead would also look cool. I was just looking to bring in some metal. It was just a design choice. I think you could make any bead that you have that you like work. So right now I'm exiting from here. I'm going to turn. Maybe I'll go back this. Yeah. Okay. Wherever you start, it's kind of up to you. You'll need to weave into kind of the center, roundabout. And I started with metal beads. You don't have to, but I did. So I'm exiting just from kind of just like a random place in my work. from like right here. And I picked up one of those metal beads. I'm gonna bring it down. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tack. So tacking is, you remember in our bead embroidery class, for anyone who wasn't in our class, what that was we were kind of borrowing an existing location of thread. In a way, it's kind of almost like brick stitch. We're gonna go down and come back up, catching that thread on the way. So coming up from here, I'm gonna go down through this next spot. So again, I'm exiting from that SuperDuo bead right there, right? And I'm gonna hop over and go down right there. And when I do that with a bead on it, the bead should just sit there. And I want to come back up now. And remember, I went down through here. I'm going to go ahead and come up through this one. We're treating these kind of like holes in a fabric now, almost like a little, you know, like a little cross stitch fabric. So come on up through that. And your bead will sit there. And on the back side, no thread. You'll see it if you really look, but what it's doing is it's just hopping. And when you pull tight, you can lock down. Another way you could do that, if you want it to be completely invisible, meaning your thread does not show, you can pick up a bead and go down through the same hole you came up from. And then just hop up in the next place. And that's an even more invisible way to do it. They both work. They're both pretty flawless on the back. And so the only thing you really don't want to do is jump 2 beads. You kind of want to always be jumping aside, you know, in here, catching the threads in here, not going over like that. So I wouldn't ever want to cross from here to there, right? I would want to go from here to here or here to here, diagonals, to avoid my thread showing on the back. As long as I'm going diagonal, I got it. And if you don't want to put a bead in another space, like say, for example, I didn't want to put a bead here, but I wanted to put a bead over here, I could travel there just by going down, back up, right? But I think I like the look of putting another bead. So I'm going to put that bead here. Get that on there. And now it's time for a shell. So just coming up through, going diagonal. And let's start with, I'm going to go from under the shell and to the top. So 3 seed beads. So again, these are those size 11. Pick those up, bring those down. And let's go through that shell again. Same hole. It's only got 1 hole in it. To get those 3 seed beads on there. And then get back down through that. You can help it a little, just same with the picos. Hold that top bead and pull it. And I'm going to go back down. So I'm exiting from here, right? Come back up, sorry. Exiting from here, I'm going to go back down the same spot. And the shell will sit. It can spin a little bit. It's got some movement, but it's not going anywhere. And now I'm going to pick a spot. It can be a little hard to see around your shell, so go ahead and flip your work over. Take a look. And then just pick a spot diagonal from where you are. And come up. If you like where you are, great. If you want to travel somewhere, you can just go down through the next diagonal location. So I want to put another gold bead, but I don't want it to sit underneath my shell. So that's why I went through one and came back up. So let's see, we're right here, great spot. Metal bead, down to the same hole. And I'm going to do a couple more metal beads, I'll add 1 more shell. And then I'll check in with you guys. Oops, it jumped away. Where'd it go?
Hey Danielle, from the sidebar, I want to let you know that everyone's loving this embellishment idea. It
Yay.
certainly it makes sense. People have can see where the thread is tucking in, and they're happy to see that the shells have holes. So we were all wondering how you were going to get those on. So that makes sense now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it would be, I think it'd be really hard to do without a hole.
And again, you know, I guess the thing that we would probably say is sky's the limit. Whatever you want to put here, crystals, other types of beads, you could do whatever you want, because someone's asking, can you use 6 O's instead of metal beads? And our answer is yes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that would be a great way to bring in lots of color. You could do the, you know how in an anemone, or I always say that wrong, but those anemone bracelets where they kind of have like those little standing up spots, where someone goes through a 6-0 and then they put a little 11 and then go back down to the 6. You could do little hops like that, and that would look so amazing. That's a great idea.
It is. We haven't even done this bracelet and we're planning our next 6.
I'm always doing that too, though. So I can't really say anything because I'm always doing the same thing.
Danielle, did you have any trouble finding the shells at Michael's?
No, they found me. They were calling me from the wall. They're in, okay, so they're in a different section than the strung beads. At least in my Michael's, they are located near the acrylic beads. I was over there looking for parts for the beaded eye, those little sticky gems. It's kind of in that same area. There's some letter beads in like boxes. So like that general location would be the best place to look for them.
Perfect.
I also noticed on the app, like it'll tell you what aisle if you type in the SKU. So there's those. Do you guys want to see more embellishing, or is there anything else that I could cover?
Danielle, from me monitoring the sidebar, I would say this makes sense. And
Okay.
you know, people will be able to watch that again in the recording. If you wouldn't mind, how about you attach one more shell? And if we've got one more second to get people started, I think
Yeah.
that's the best use of our time. Because the picot is still confusing a little bit. So maybe you could
Oh
go
yeah, let me show
more on
that. Good point. Good point. Okay, yeah. So what I've been doing is I'm just coming up through, I'm either coming up through under or above. If you come up from under, your picot is going to sit on top of your shell. Sorry, I'm tangled there. So let me show you what I mean. So I've got the picot on top of the shell here and inside of it here, which is a really neat look. So it's totally up to you which side. I alternated them. Oops. I was about to put that one on the back, guys. Let's turn and come up through. Where am I? Let's come up through here. Oops.
Danielle, we have some new people tonight, so picot was new to them.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so what a picot is. Oh, and we're going to be doing an edging class, guys, coming up. It's all edgings. I'm working on it right now, and it's going to be amazing. But what a picot is 3 seed beads, and then you go back down through another location and make them kind of pop next to each other. So 3 seed beads strung would look like that. But when you go down through here, through like another spot, I'll just do it here. See, they kind of pop up like that, and they sit where that middle bead, it pops up like a little rainbow shape or like a little half moon.
Thank you.
Might even be able to do a little better job showing it if I just kind of pinch it like that. That's a picot. It's a great edge. Like if you're doing an edge on one of these, you could go 1, 2, 3, and then hop down to the next whole turn. Add 1, 2, 3, hop down to the next. That'd be a great way to put an edge on this. And so I ended up just doing a little seed bead hop there. Let's get one more shell. So all I did for the shells was I just came up through one of the holes, brought it down so that it's sitting on top of the work, picked up 3 seed beads here, and then went back down to the same spot. And I'm going to go ahead and keep going through the work too. Just going through the shell and the bracelet. And I'll help them pop into that little shape. If they don't automatically, you can just kind of help them. See, they're sitting like that. You could also just use a single bead. The reason I did a picot instead of a single bead is because some of these holes are really big. And that little 11 is going to go right through it. If you do a picot, you're for sure, even if it, you know, kind of, sometimes they're fragile, they're real, in case you chip it a little, or 3C beads is a pretty secure way to get those to lock on there.
So Danielle, if say you decided that's it, I'm only putting these 3 on. The big question now is how do you lock this in place?
Oh, you just weave in. I'll do that really quick. So we're exiting from, take a look at where you are, and then just go through your nearest SuperDuo bead. And this is where having a 12 can be super helpful because it's tight.
We're losing your hands, Danielle.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, this part is really challenging to do. But you could also, you know, do that traveling step I showed to get yourself closer to the edge. It's much easier to get through SuperDuo beads the closer you are to the edge. And it's also easier to kind of bend the work in on itself and get it through one than getting it through 2. Once they're stitched together like this, the holes are not oriented one for one on top of each other. So you're asking your needle to bend when you're trying to go through 2, for example. But on the edge, there's movement in the SuperDuo bead, so you can get away with it. When you get to the edge, use that edge weave in I was showing you guys. Down, and then go up. Do this about 4 times.
And so Danielle, for the new people tonight, I just want to reinforce, you always teach us how to weave in your thread and not make a knot. So this is important for anyone who's watching for the first time, that you know this locks it in place.
It does, yeah. And when you're changing direction like this, it happens very quickly. But if you really wanted to knot on a design like this, a good way to do it would be knot on the side, because you'd see it. If you want to hide a knot in here, I'm gonna go through these 2. What you could do, like for example, let's say you had really short thread and you didn't have the ability to weave in, go down through one side. So this is that diagonal thing. We're going to do that again, but leave your loop up here. Leave your loop waiting for you. And then come back up through that diagonal over here. So remember, we went down here. We went down there. We're just going to come up here. Go through that loop. That's a half hitch knot. Get it to hide in there. Go through another bead before you trim your thread. And if you want to repeat that one more time in your next bead, that's an even better thing to do. So again, you just go down and then come back up through the, closest diagonal you've got there. And I'm going through my loop there. I went through my loop. And go slow. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Danielle, because you do have a couple people that they do prefer a knot. So I appreciate you showing them a second way of securing their thread.
Oh yeah, sure. And there's nothing wrong with knotting. I think the only reason I don't do it is because sometimes I take my work apart, or I might want to go through that bead again and I can't get through it if I've got a knot there. But it's totally a totally legit way to do that. And so yeah, there's that. Let's see. We kind of gobbled up our last little time. I might have a second to show to start again, but it'll put us a little bit over. What do you think?
What I'm going to recommend is we've got 5 minutes. So there is a great recording and you showed the opening step twice. I think we have some new people. The most important thing they need to know is running out of thread. And I think if you could show that, that will be a great way for everyone to leave this class having all the skills.
Perfect. That's a good, I didn't show that and I should have shown that. It's weaving in, but when I do my weave-ins for a new strand, I leave my old strand in place and I weave it in up into the work. So what I would do, say the strand was getting short, I would bring in my new strand anywhere really. And we want to keep going until the tail stops moving. So just go through, and the secret to making something lock in is to do some turns. Alternatively, the knot I just showed you, you could use that knot here as a way to weave in. Nothing wrong with that. If you don't want a knot, here's another way to do it. The cool thing about SuperDuos is you can get a pretty steady weave in with only 2 turns. So this, if you can see my tail here, I'm pulling, it's moving but barely, right? By the time I do the turn to come back this direction, it'll be locked in really tight. And so that's what I'm doing. Just gonna turn, go through all these beads. And now I'm in the same spot as my old working thread. And if I pull those apart, nice tight connection there. Here's my tail. I'm gonna get rid of that tail really quick. It stopped moving when I pulled on it. You could burn that if you wanted to, just a little burn with a thread burner. And then you just start doing your new stitch. So same way we did before, here's my new thread. I'll start building my thread. Building my rows with my new thread. Then after like 3, maybe 4 rows, bring your old working thread back, put a needle on it, and weave it up into the new strands. That just makes it flowy, right? If you tried to weave in your old thread back this way, and then you bring your new thread in and you weave it in on top of your old thread, you get a stiff spot in your work that will make it not do this cool, flowy, sneaky thing that it does. So that's why I always weave in the old, create some new, and then take my old thread and weave it up into my new rows. And of course, if you want a knot, you can do that knot trick we just showed.
Perfect. Danielle, I'm going to give you like 1 minute to just look up and let everyone see you. It was an awesome class. Sidebar is very, very happy. It's definitely an intermediate class. I can hardly believe you managed to teach it in under an hour. So we really, really appreciate it. And why don't you tell people what to look forward to as well?
Yeah, I got our new board. Here's our August board. And it starts out with, I'm on this side. This class is called Design to Sell. And what it is it's a question and answer 1 hour where I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can about selling your work. And more specifically, what designs seem to sell better than others and why. And then of course, designing so that you can make lots of them and their cost is low enough that you can mass produce them and sell them and make a profit. And then I was just gonna do some bloopers and show you guys some of my best and worst sellers from previous sales activities that I've done. So it'll be lots of laughs, lots of fun. And then this is a really cool pendant necklace. This is ladder stitch with SuperDuo beads. That's how the chain was made. I'll put that closer. So we're gonna ladder stitch SuperDuos to make a really cool chain. This goes super fast and you can put little beads in it if you want to. And then there's a little pendant that is a cowrie shell and one of those little kind of patina discs on the back. So we'll do a pendant, we'll do the chain, and that's that class. And then these little mandala earrings that you're seeing here, those are a special event on August 21st. So we're straying from our Friday just this once for these because there's a maker event. Michael's is hosting Bead-a-lon and an influencer is going to teach us. So it's a day of making, I think is what we're calling it. It's the day of making. So there's back-to-back classes. And this one is our one for John Bead. So it's a seed beaded web, kind of like net stitch in there. And last but not least, we're going to do a peyote cuff. This is a wavy peyote band. And it's a really intricate looking, but surprisingly super easy to make. Even count to boot. So that's August right there. So looking forward to seeing you guys next Friday. Next Friday's time is moving to 2 p.m. Central. So we will be doing the design to sell Q&A at 2 p.m. Central, and that's our new class time going forward. All right, so yeah, look forward to seeing you guys next week, next Friday at 2 p.m. Central. Bye.